What is up, everybody, and welcome to this panel on day two of Spotlight Indies amazing live weekend. We're doing a panel today on cover art and audience expectations, and I'm very excited to chat with a wonderful bunch of panelists. Fraser's just joining in just cause he feels like it. Little intruder, but I'm Adrian M. Gibson. I'm your moderator for today. I am the author of Mushroom Blues, as well as the co-host of SFF Addicts podcast with MJ Kuhn and Greta Kelly. And I'm also a book designer, which is probably why I'm moderating this panel. So I do like cover design and interior design and formatting and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just going to go around. Do you want me to introduce you, Fraser, or does everyone know who you are?
I literally have imposter syndrome right now, so I think everybody knows me.
All right, well, there's Fraser. We'll just leave it at that. Next up is Connor Kaplan. How are you, Connor?
I'm pretty good. I'm wishing I had a copy of my book within arm's reach right now. I told myself I was going to do that, and then I immediately forgot.
But you wore that jacket, so then
yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's the real attention getter in this whole sort of get up. And I've mentioned before we started recording, I've always wanted to look like my grandmother's rug. So really, that's mission
Connor's
success.
Never looked so good in Paisley.
And that's saying something. I wear a lot of that. So I'm a quadruplet. I'm the author of The Sword in the Street, The Fall's All There Is, The Diplomacy of the Knife, and probably a forthcoming novella maybe this summer if I can get it done in time.
Amazing. And Kirsten?
Hi, really excited to be here. My name is Kirsten Espinoza Rosero. Some of you might know me as K.E. Rosero because my name is kind of long. I write fantasy books about dragons and airships, currently the Burn Red Sky series, and that's kind of how I toppled into cover art and book illustrations. Super
Amazing.
excited to be here.
Glad to have you here. And last up, we have Tanwir.
Hi, nice to be here. So I've written all sorts of different things from poetry and sci-fi, cyberpunk to fantasy, horror, and kids' books, which just try and throw in there as well. But I do also do art as well, and I've quite a few of my own covers I've done the artwork for. So really stoked to be in this group, in this panel.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very excited to talk about cover art because this is something that I'm very, very passionate about, and so we can all just share a love for cover art. But on a general level, I just want to get your takes on why you think cover art is so important. This is kind of broad, not just self-publishing or indie, but all books in general. So, Ton, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I think we live in a visual world. I think it's got increasingly more visual as the years have gone by. But even as a kid, I remember images were like when you saw the cover of a film, or you saw a poster of a film or a billboard. That's what grabbed you. And the same is true for books. You see the covers, when you're walking past the bookstores, or when I was walking through Waterstones or Borders, missing Borders now. But all those bookshops we used to have. That's what you were looking for. That's what stood out to you was the cover art. So the image is what's there. I still remember the very first film I saw in the cinema was Jurassic Park, and I still remember that classic red, black, gold, the T-Rex skull. That image is burned into my head, and something that simple has stayed with me for that long. It's like, I think that grabs most people. Maybe not everybody, but I certainly think the majority of people are grabbed by like a single image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's tapping into human psychology and just the way our brains work. And I think while you were talking, I was remembering when I bought the VHS for The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and I just I had to wait through an entire shopping excursion with my mom, and I bought that DVD at the beginning, or so I bought the VHS at the beginning, and I was just holding on to that thing and just staring at that cover for an hour and a half. But now it's just burned into my mind. I'm like, here's the Fellowship. There are the Black Riders on their horses going across the river and stuff like that. And it's just
VHS was always funny because the box was beautiful, it was fantastic. You opened it and there's this tacky plastic tape thing inside. It was like,
but that's so quintessentially
the cover art on VHS were fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you remember those little reflective stickers that you used to get that used to do all the colors, right?
Yeah.
It was they sent me nuts, man. But it's weird with what you were saying, Tando, because as soon as you said, I remember seeing Jurassic Park for the first time.
Yeah.
First thing that pops into my head is an image.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like exactly proving what you're saying, that like, and same with you, Adrian, like Lord of the Rings, I'm like living it out in here, but I'm seeing it. It's like images are everything, right?
Yeah, and I vehemently dislike when people say don't judge a book by its cover, because everybody judges goddamn books by their covers. It's just like it's kind of, it's all funneled into that. I mean, from one thing is like window shopping when we were all growing up, and now it's all thumbnails on Amazon and Goodreads and stuff like that. And the first thing you see is the cover, and that's immediately what people judge it by. Connor, do you wanna get in here with your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned some of the stuff that I was really thinking about with as far as like why cover art is important. Like I think it's generally, this is going to be a really autistic answer, but it's good for really like primal reasons, because I think human beings really like making connections and categorizing things and belonging to social groups, and those are all things that like cover art can do. It's like this quick and easy way to sort of have these various sort of signifiers or identifiers of like, well, you see this kind of cover, that means romance, this cover means like sword and sorcery, this one is
Mhm.
like epic fantasy, and so there's various different ways where you can signal like to a reader like, this is the kind of group that this book belongs in, here are the kinds of things you're going to find in it, and it often can evoke similar sort of feelings. Oh, that reminds me of this book that I read the other day that I really liked, and it creates those sort of familiar feelings that sort of get them to open the book and turn the pages and everything.
Yeah, I agree. Kirsten?
Cover art is kind of a fascinating case study, really. I think, like, coming from the perspective of a fantasy nerd, which I think all of us can relate to, especially writing fantasy books, like, we want to convey as much information as possible. We want to be descriptive and immersive, and we have like 1,000 pages to do so. But with cover art, we have like 2 seconds to convey visual information, like, so, and that includes like genre, subgenre, like who's the ideal reader for this book. So we have 2 seconds to design sort of a cover, illustrate a cover, that not only appeals to a wide range of readers, but also connects your book to the right reader, like
Mhm.
potentially new readers and readers familiar with your work. So I think that's why cover art is important.
Yeah, I mean, you and Connor touched on it exactly. Is like, what can cover art, and this is not just art, it's also like typography and all
Right.
of this in conjunction, what it can convey about the story itself, from like genre or genres plural, tropes, all those kinds of things. So let's dig a little bit deeper into this in terms of like, how can the cover of a book establish reader expectations before the reader even opens the book itself? Fraser, go for it.
Yeah, cover art is its own form of artwork, I feel. Like, when you go to a gallery and you see like you expect like a full of Renaissance paintings, right? You are expecting a certain type of painting, right? But with a cover, you're expecting a certain type of art in the same way. It's got to tell a story, it's got to represent your story, it's got to be enough of what your story is in terms of vibes and in terms of content to be able to represent it, while at the same time be catching to the eye and everything like that. So your cover artists are kind of like they're walking this line between like doing something completely new and then also doing something that is going to meet a reader's expectations. Because if you have just like a completely white cover with white writing on it, right, it's what does that tell you about the book, right? It's going to be it's going to be nothing, right? But if you've got something, a cover that absolutely pops and that slaps and that's really, really bright, that tells you that book's going to be a lot of fun. If you've got a cover that's like super dark and it's like moody, it's fulfilling a function, but it's setting an expectation, So I think with covers, as a creator, you're looking to ensure that your artist understands what kind of level of expectation you want someone to have for the book. But at the same time, as someone who just loves art, I love to see covers that give me an immediate expectation or like a feel as to what that story's about. Like if you see a movie poster and it's just like got the vibe of the movie, I'm just like, yes. So yeah, so that to me, it's your chance to set expectations, but there's also this specific framework that you're doing that within, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because it's kind of like you are on one hand, playing into pre-established sort of expectations about, okay, what is, and obviously this goes through like waves and trends. What is in this current moment the trend for romantasy covers, right? And the people who are doing the cover art and design work at publishers, or if it's in the self-pub side, like the authors kind of guiding their artists and their designers, they're kind of on one hand playing into the pre-established expectation, but on the other giving it a little twist that makes it feel just unique enough that it's like, oh, this isn't something that I read like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah,
or a month
totally.
ago, or a year ago, or whatever, right?
Like if you went into like a supermarket or shelf and you were to see all of the displays. So in here in the UK supermarket shelves, you basically have mystery thrillers and romantasy, and cozy romance books. Those are the three things you'll find. So you can pick them and you can tell which is which, right? You're not going to look at a book and go, is that a thriller or is that a sapphic romance?
Why does this thriller have like baked goods on the cover?
Exactly, right? So, but that's the thing. If a cover's not doing that, then for me, it's not done. It's not fulfilled its function. So it's got to set an expectation because that's part of its job.
Don, do you want to get in here on expectations?
Yeah, so I think it's really important. I think there's always a balance there, though, isn't there? Because we all have we know what a fantasy cover looks like. We know what a sci-fi cover looks like. We just kind of have we have all these genre imagery inside our heads from our past experiences. But then you also want something in terms of expectations. You want like a blurb, really. I suppose this is where the blurb and the front cover kind of jostle for position, really. You want to hook the reader. You want to let them know what kind of thing they're getting into. You want them to be able to recognize it. But you also don't want to give too much away. You also want to stand out. You also want to be different. You also want to be fresh. You want them to actually... So, I mean, if the cover attracts you to the book, you also then want them to read the book. So there's a disconnect there almost. So yeah, a piece of art will attract you. You'll go over and look at it and go, oh, okay. But actually, does it make you want to read it? And I think that needs just a little bit more then. It's not just, yes, it's this, but why do I want to read it? And part of that for me is mystery. Actually, some of it is holding back and kind of saying, well, I'm not quite sure what's going to be in here. So actually, that front cover about baked goods might well be a great thriller. Who knows? But you just
There's
have to
an
get
assassin
that
posing
really
as a
It's
baker.
really hard to nail it because there's so many different things you have to juggle and balance.
Yeah, you're totally right though. There's this balance of like giving the reader enough to hook them, because I kind of view it as like an inverse pyramid where it's like the top is like the largest point of capture and that's the cover. That's gonna net the most attention right away, and then it's kind of funneling down. Okay, you've got your blurb, that's gonna capture another amount of people, and then all of that funnels down to the amount of people who actually decide like, I'm gonna purchase this book and I'm gonna read it, right? But it's like you want to have enough on the cover to entice a potential reader, but you don't want to give everything away. It's like you're not going to make your cover like your climax scene or something like that, right? You have to kind of pick and choose like what kind of cover I'm going to go for. Is it going to be more graphic? Is it going to be more painterly? Is it going to show a whole scene? And if so, like what is that going to convey to the reader? Is it going to show them enough to entice them but not give away everything about the narrative? So there's this really fine balance that you have to kind of play with that. And if you do want to have like a thriller about like a baker assassin, or like an assassin who just loves cookies, then fucking go for it. But like
poison cookies, maybe. Oh, who knows? I think the thing is, the further back in time you go, I think it was easier. One, because there were obviously less books, but also because there was more opportunity to be novel. I think the problem now is the further down the road we go, everything's you feel like everything's been done. I mean, it's not. I mean, everyone comes up with new stories, but in terms of covers and in terms of things that are really stand out, it's really hard to have something that, like I said, has that balance. And yeah, you want people to recognize what it is and say, yeah, that's my thing. I want to read it. But you also want to, be that hook. You want to go, well, actually, what is this about? What, I want to read the first chapter. I want to know what's going on. It's really hard to. I think it's getting harder to do that now. that it maybe was in the past.
I agree. Kirsten, what are your thoughts?
I think like those are really good points. I mean, obviously you want to stand out. Like our book babies are kind of, our book babies, so we want them to have the best possible chance, stand out, be recognizable. But I don't think there's anything inherently bad about sticking to a formula. I think we count on this formula to attract readers because going back to typography, which is, like it is part of the cover art. You can tell usually by the typography if it's going to be like dark academia, right? Or like dragon fantasy or like baker fantasy. Sorry, all this talk of baked goods, it really got to me.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys. But it is a thriller, so and that sort of thing. And like I think like trying to stand out, like when I think about Jurassic Park, which we were talking about earlier, there is sort of an art to its simplicity. When you look at it, it's not like technically complex, right? Like it's a dinosaur skeleton that's black against a red background and then a very recognizable font. And it is kind of formulaic. It doesn't really, like, in terms of complexity, it doesn't really like pop out or try like impossible things. It's just simple, recognizable. And like I said, I think, and everyone here like touched upon this point, that it's really a fine line between, working with what works, which actually works for us because it makes it easier to work with these associations that readers have, and trying something new.
I mean, what you're talking about with Jurassic Park, it's almost like getting into the fundamentals of logo design.
Right.
Because the Jurassic Park poster is a logo. That's
It's a logo, yeah.
It's just a logo. And when it comes to logos, and I see this trend in fantasy as well, where it's kind of like, I'll just take my friend Ryan Cahill's series, The Bound and the Broken, which every book is essentially, this is not including like the new releases through the Broken Binding. This is like his original covers. It's very much just like, here's a symbol. And that symbol was like the leading factor in conjunction with the typography to convey exactly what kind of book you were getting into. And that kind of thing, like I see PL Stewart in the chat. PL, his series, like the Drowned Kingdom saga, like very much plays into symbology and just using those symbols. Thank you, PL. I appreciate you, buddy. It plays into like having a very iconic logo kind of driven aesthetic to it, and that works. It doesn't work for a lot of genres, but it does work for things like epic fantasy, for instance. And so you can play around with like, okay, this is something that I've seen in whatever genre I'm getting into, whatever genre I'm choosing to publish in, and you can kind of play around with different basically different experiments that have already been done before, and you can just, like a scientist, be like, okay, I don't need to build up, this theory from the ground up. It's like I'm building on top of my predecessors, whether they're long dead or whether it's like my direct mentor or anything like that. Like I can build upon their work and then use that as a foundation for me to experiment a little bit with new things. And as authors, you can do that with the cover artists and the cover designers that you work with, the people who are doing typography and all that kind of stuff. Connor, what are your thoughts on expectations?
Honestly,
give him his moment, Fraser.
Yeah.
I feel like, we keep going back to this idea of like an assassin who's also like a baker or something like that. I feel like using that as an example real quick, I that can sort of demonstrate the point I want to make. If you put like Keanu Reeves as like John Wick on the cover of it, of like just like decked out in a tattered suit with some oven mitts and an apron, I'm buying that book so fast because it's plugging into two distinct sort of genres of the spy thriller and the idea of like a cookbook or a bakery kind of a thing, and you're mashing them together in a new and interesting way that immediately creates an appeal. So that's the kind of thing you want a good cover to do. It's like you're falling back on these familiar tropes, but you're twisting it just enough that it can be kind of like fun and interesting. Like my favorite example for like both the good and the sort of bad things that cover design can do, some of the fallbacks is came about with my first cover, because like so I started out in 2021 and I was like this total unknown in the industry. No one knew who I was or anything. So I was like, I need to find a cover artist who has a reputation and everything. And I hired Felix Ortiz because he's this phenomenal art wizard who everyone adores his work, and he's yeah, exactly, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, you know
I
from
know.
experience.
Yeah.
I need to share a quick non sequitur. I'm about how I met him back in November. I had this.
Oh, I saw
like,
that picture. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. So basically, like, there's this thing would happen where like I had to go before this thing called like a Beit Din, which is like this Jewish council with like 3 pillars of the community and everything. And it was like there's this one woman who was going to be on the sort of council and everything, who was like driving there to meet with me and everything. And I had to write this whole essay beforehand that she had read. And she's like sharing the idea to her husband. And she's like, yeah, so this guy's like an author. I'm like, oh, cool. What's he write? Oh, he writes like sci-fi fantasy sort of stuff. Oh, what's the name of his books? Oh, it's this thing, The Sword in the Street or something like that. Wait a minute. I did that guy's cover. And it's just Felix Ortiz and I apparently were going to both the same synagogue and the same Havra, which is like this weird countercultural Judaism thing in the same city. And neither of us knew because we never synced up until like last November. It was crazy.
Dude.
It was this crazy thing. But no, so he did this the cover for me, and it worked really well in the idea that no one knew who I was, but everyone knew who Felix Ortiz was. So they see a cover that he's done, and they're gonna be interested in the book because he himself has this reputation that's being carried over through like the book. It's generating a sense of trust even if you don't know who I am. But one of the downsides of it is Felix at the time was doing a lot of books that are very grim, dark, action heavy, somewhat close to horror sort of fantasy. And that was not what this book was. So I got a lot of new readers, but a lot of them left me 3 stars or whatever. There was like, this is good, but it's also not at all what I was expecting from the cover. So there's these sort of little bits of ephemera to a cover art that I didn't even originally anticipate. I just thought, oh, this guy is a known quantity. I thought my book would be grimdark enough that people would know what to expect, but there was this extra sort of like layer of material and stuff that came with it that I hadn't anticipated. That it's like, it's really important to sort of like look out for all of the angles that what you were saying and what you are building when you're creating a cover.
Yeah, because you're tapping into something that is really important, because it's like the potential impact on audiences when your book is, because not to say that your cover, because I think actually the cover for Sword in the Street conveys exactly what that book is.
Yeah. It's a great cover.
It's just that the expectations that Felix's fan base had about the types of covers that he was doing up until that point.
Yeah, that's exactly
maybe misled them to thinking like, oh, this is another cover that is in a similar kind of genre that the rest of his portfolio is. Whereas like mine is like, you look at mine and this is way outside of Felix's norm, and so no one's gonna go into this and be like grim dark fantasy. It's like, no, it's so
no one's expecting like medieval Mike Fletcher sort of stuff.
Right, exactly. But like, let's discuss the potential impacts of not necessarily like purposefully, but just inaccurate, misleading, inauthentic covers that don't necessarily convey what the actual book is. And maybe it could be like an author just thinking like, oh, this is a popular trend and therefore that's what I'm going to go with. But then that ends up being a mismatch for what the actual story is about. Ton? Fraser?
Before we do that, because it's a great talking point, I cannot get the image of Keanu Reeves in a suit with an apron and a gun in this hand and a serving spoon in this hand out of my head. But that is basically, this is a perfect
he can't use his gun with oven mitts on.
Exactly, right?
It's impossible.
He doesn't need a gun, he only needs a pencil.
That's true.
I feel like
he has to shoot.
I mean, there's so much
in the oven.
There's so much like materials for killing people within a kitchen. Just saying.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
Why hasn't it been done already? Right? Yeah. I like Shea Wick would be great, right?
Shea Wick.
What I would like to do at this point is
a
introduce
3 Michelin star movie.
Yeah, introduce our other guest who is here, who is an artist in her own right, and it is the wonderful Hope Christopherson. So I'm going to welcome Hope to the stage. Hope finally made it.
Welcome, Hope, from the garden.
Hi.
Looking beautiful.
Stunning.
How are you, Hope?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yes, apologies for being late. I was painting a mermaid and time disappeared. But I'm very excited to be here. I've been, looking at all of your work. You're all such creative humans. It's exciting.
Thank you for being here with us. Do you want to introduce yourself to everyone before we dig into another topic?
Wonderful. Yeah. I am a illustrator and kind of an author, but I'm not like a big storyteller like you guys with full-on novels and plot lines. I would say I'm like 80% art and 20% story. And I have sort of a science background, so I try to catalog imaginary creatures. And the more I know about them, the more they disappear. So it's a never-ending journey. But I'm excited to be here and work with other people who are also delving into imagination. So
Yeah,
yeah.
we're excited to have you here. But we were just talking about basically expectations about what a cover can do to convey genre, tropes, all kinds of stuff for the reader. But on the flip side, what are the potential impacts that inaccurate, misleading, inauthentic covers can have on the reader that would lead them to disliking a book or leaving a bad review, or saying that like this cover was essentially setting me up for something that this book wasn't?
Well, if the form does not follow the function in book design and also product design, then you're going to get some, confused humans. So anything that doesn't quite match up, you know what I mean? I think that like honesty in art is a rather brave thing to do. And although we're working in the realms of science fiction and fantasy, I think that you can be deeply true through metaphor in a way that literal representation doesn't necessarily allow for. So, I mean, I've never experienced anyone getting angry with a book cover that, is sort of misleading because those people generally don't tend to make it to the point where they're getting hired by authors or they're organized enough to self-publish and do that sort of stuff. But I would say something lacking art, something lacking beauty is going to be something that just doesn't necessarily pull anybody in, and therefore there'll be a lack of review, or if the material itself just doesn't match what the contents are, of course. So I don't know if I've ever actually had that problem with a book in particular, a fantasy book or a book about history or theory. I think that more so the cover has the potential to snag imagination versus pull anybody away. But I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on that. But my number one premise would be if the cover does not match the contents, then of course you will have confused humans who might set it down or perhaps be aggressive. I hope not, but I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you go on a place like Goodreads, you'll find that aggression in spades, unfortunately.
There. Okay, I'm gonna stay off there.
Yeah. I mean, as an author, general rule is like, yeah, maybe don't dig into your reviews too much because it's interesting territory. Ton, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. I think I agree with Hope in the sense that I don't think I can think of an offhand example where the cover hasn't matched the content of the book. But what I can say, especially going back to Goodreads, because I think this problem is really obvious on Goodreads, is the different editions of books and then lots of variant covers. And when you've got, particularly if this usually happens with sort of bigger series and more sort of like prominent authors, because they have multiple editions of the same book, and because you're sort of you have preconceptions about what that's supposed to look like. When you suddenly are graced with a new cover or a different cover, one that looks, very different to what you were expecting, that kind of feels a bit jarring. And you kind of like, well, where did this come from? Which is the right one? Which is more authentic? Why have they chosen to? It kind of like, as Hope said, it leaves some very confused humans. So it's not so much that the cover doesn't match the content, but rather that the cover's been changed or there are different iterations of the cover, and that they're a little bit inconsistent, and I kind of find that a little bit jarring.
Yeah, or just like the bane of every bookshelf is when you have mismatched editions of a series, and it's just like, oh god, that pains me so much. Where it's just like, yeah, like that edition that I loved, like that kind of art style that they had is like that's discontinued and they have a new edition, and it's like, okay, well, like now I can't complete my collection unless I want to like go on eBay or somewhere else and actually find like a a copy to match it or whatever. Kirsten, do you have any thoughts on this in terms of like that mismatch, in terms of that that mixed messaging? Not necessarily that anyone's getting super, super aggressive, but just like, you know.
People do get aggressive, so like, yeah, I mean we're talking about like lovely human beings, and I think many human beings are creatures of habit, so they tend to stick to their own genres. You know, they a lot of readers stick to what's familiar to them. Like as an example, like using myself, like I really like dark fantasy, like epic fantasy bordering grim dark. Like that's why I don't share my TBR list online, because I think people will just think I'm a really angry person. But it's not the case. I just like reading about anger. So like I picked up a book the other day that had all the, all ticked up all the things on the checklist for dark fantasy, like, black cover, dark colors, like typography fit medieval fantasy. It looked really bleak. It had dragons, which is always a plus. And it turned out like it was like a young adult romantasy. Like I was reading it and I was like, and I have absolutely nothing against young adult romantasy. I was just in the mood for like revenge. So like in that sense, like
Aren't we all?
I mean, I'm sorry, that is like
Connor,
such a fantasy ass writer line. I'm in the mood for revenge.
This is my origin story, by the way, my villain origin story.
Oh, that's great.
This is the clip they cut back to with it when in the future when like, and after that it all went wrong.
Fucking Keanu came at me with like kitchen utensils. And now Kirsten's up for revenge.
I think that's an accurate summary of of my answer, but like I think it can lead to disappointment and it can lead to frustration. Just because, just as creatures of habit, we're expecting, to be soothed by our comfort genre, and then being surprised by something completely might be a bit jarring.
Yeah, Fraser?
I think that if you were to take Lawland Bestiaries by Hope, The Demon by Tan, Mushroom Blues by you, Adrian, Burn Red Skies by Kirsten, The Fall Is All There Is by Connor, and Cage of Stars by me, and we were to all have our covers redone based on a current trend, and they all looked very similar, that is not setting the right expectation for the reader, because all those books are very, very different, and people are going to get very different things from them. So when you're looking to design a cover or when you're working with an artist, the key thing is to bear in mind what's the experience of the person who is going to be picking up this book. What are the desires of the person? What are the tastes of the person? You've got to know your target audience, right? Just like back in the ye olden days, a Renaissance painter would paint a particular portrait of the king. Well, the king would have a certain expectation about what you wanted that portrait to convey, right? Mm-hmm. And the artist would have to capture that. And it's the same thing with a book. We as the writer have to ensure that the right things are conveyed by the cover, because otherwise you get the 1-star reviews. You get that I was expecting it to be this and it was that. Like if someone wanted an encyclopedia on mythical beasts and they ended up getting a robot, wandering around a Dyson sphere, they would be like 1 star straight away, right? But you give them, like, if they're in the mood for that encyclopedia and you give them the cover for Lawland Bestiaries, they're like, oh, I'm in the right place again. So, and this is where, it's the mismatch quite often happens is when there's not enough of an understanding about who the cover is intended for, because you should be able to pick your market based on the cover alone.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, it comes down to like a question of authenticity. It's like you as the author, you understand your story, and therefore you have to think about who your audience is. It's not necessarily like you have to make a checklist of like, this is my target audience or anything like that, but you have to have a general idea of like, okay, if I'm writing, this novel, it's for, the fucking dark Kirsten revenge people out there, not necessarily like YA romantasy. And if you're writing for a YA romantasy audience, then, your cover has to be representative of your story, but also representative of your intended target audience. And so it's kind of like, that's you as an author being authentic, right? And then obviously the artist and designer are coming into the equation to bring sort of their own artistic authenticity into the project based on your guidance, right? And even then, it's kind of like, you know, things aren't always going to go perfectly. Holly's mentioning in the comments, like maybe you have an artist who like stops doing the art midway through the series. That could even happen midway through like your commission, right? Like you could commission somebody and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, you're left without a cover or anything like that, right? So those are things that can come up, unfortunately. But when it comes to authentic representation, it's kind of like, Connor, I know you thought a lot about this when you've redone the cover for The Fall Is All There Is multiple times.
Yeah.
And that cover being a representation of you as an individual, not only as someone who's autistic, but also like a quadruplet, and the fact that you kind of infused those elements into your stories is so amazing. But, you know, can you speak upon how you utilize your cover and redoing your cover to kind of make the representation of that particular book feel more authentic to you and the kind of messaging that you wanted to put out there? Because we can use covers to convey information about, you know, the race of the characters, their gender, their identity, representation, disabilities, and all kinds of different things. So
honestly, yeah, I think I've had about 3 covers for The Fall Is All There Is now. The first one, I liked all of them. I liked them all for different reasons. Honestly, the first one, it was only there for a couple months, but it does a lot of the same things that the current one does. But it was like it was a friend offered to do the first cover for free, and so we sat down together and sort of worked out a couple different elements. But they only had access to Canva and everything, and so it was like we did the best we could with the resources we had and the training that this person had and everything, and it turned out really well, and I liked it, and it sold a lot better than the first book. And part of that was because I was much more established. That I don't want to chalk it all up to the cover or anything, but and then eventually I had this there was another friend who offered to redo to do a cover around the same time. I accidentally had 2 different people making me covers, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to try with this one. And it was the one I think most people know is the one with the dude atop this sort of a cyborg horse, where it's like that one I really liked because it had this sort of this dude's in this sort of early seasons Game of Thrones sort of Jaime Lannister sort of get up, and there's this sort of Mists of Avalon sort of vibe of a dude on a horse sort of in profile and everything. But the horse is just weird and cyborg, and there's just all this machinery, and it's one red eye and everything, and that's the kind of vibe I was always trying to go for whenever I try to do a cover, is to depict the weird range of things you're going to find in the book. It's never coming at it quite as like one genre or another. And by the time I got to sort of finalize the current thing, it was just sort of like, all right, my most recent cover artist was Faye Lane, and she sent me like a whole document, be like, what are the themes you're working with, what are some of the most striking visuals you have and everything, and we assembled this sort of like collage, this sort of kaleidoscopic cover, because much like myself and much like the book, it's constantly doing everything all at once all the time, just sort of firing on all cylinders and just sort of like throwing everything in the kitchen sink in there and everything. And so it's like, all right, let's do swords, blue castles, throw in a gas mask, maybe some clockwork, and just throw a little bit of every genre in there, and just have everyone sort of sort out the chaos and everything. And that's really, I think, done the best job of capturing the whole of what the book is. And I think the reason that it worked so effectively is often because I took the time to go over this document that this artist sent me and everything, and actually put in the thought first and foremost in this very structured sort of way to figure out like what are the things that make this book effective, what are the things that are going to signal that to an audience and everything. Just trying to figure out what's the weirdest, most autistic chaos I can throw onto a cover and everything. It's like that's worked out for me very successfully in the last year or so since I got that new cover.
Yeah, but that cover is like the most authentic representation of that book to date, because it's kind of, I mean, one of the beautiful things about indie publishing, self-publishing, is that you can just kind of revamp your cover and put a new one out there and test the waters and see like, okay, did that cover do a better job of capturing readers and getting sales and stuff like that? Versus this new one that I've been experimenting with. And if the new one doesn't work as well, then you can always switch back to the old one.
And that's
kind of like, Go for it.
Yeah, that's one of the strengths of I think indie publishing as well, is that the idea that there's a lot of pressure to really go all out for your cover initially, like find the artist who you have to pay like $2,000 to get this really gorgeous illustration or something like that. But that doesn't always have to be the case. There's like I had two people who were friends of mine just willing to do those first two covers and everything.
Yep.
It worked out pretty well for everything I was able to get out of it, and I got a lot of mileage, especially at that second cover. It worked really well for a long time of getting drawing people in and everything, and then eventually when I had more sort of resources under my belt, we could sort of mine deeper into it and put in more time and more money into getting a cover that more fully maps the vision onto the page.
Yeah. Ton, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think authenticity is definitely the most important thing, and I think what Connor's just described really for his final cover, you can hear it in his voice when he's talking about it. It not only represents the story, it also represents him as the author, which is something you mentioned earlier. Really, I think that's really, really important. Shout out to Fraser for mentioning the demon. Well, that's a really simple cover. I think the colours were quite vivid, and that kind of that was the eye-catching part. But it was interesting. You mentioned earlier, Adrian, about typesetting and the fonts that you use. And I actually, a lot of that story was inspired by. I was actually inspired by the relationship between Angel and Buffy. I don't know if any of you are Buffy fans. And actually, the typeset I use for that, it's a free font. Luckily, was actually the Angel font. And the motif on it it's a lighter. It's literally just a lighter on a road, but it looks a bit odd because its colours are like vivid blue and pink because it's a cyberpunk setting. But that lighter has quite a lot of significance. Well, it's an actual real object in the story, but it also has quite a few metaphorical significances in terms of the story too and the character. And it was authentic to that story. It wasn't anything particularly fancy, but I feel like it really fit. It encapsulated what was going on. So I do think, finding that thing that fits your story and fits you is really the most important thing. And like Colin just said, it doesn't have to be the most expensive thing in the world. It doesn't have to be, all singing, all dancing. It depends on what you've got to work with, really. And as long as it's authentic, as long as it's true to the story and true to the author, I think it can. I think that almost carries. But then I will also say, as Colin was saying, that if you have more resources and you want to go back and you've got the opportunity to redo it and you've got a vision. And sometimes it happens. Certainly, as an indie author, you have a vision, but you don't have the resources to put that into practice. So you have to kind of settle for something second rate. Really, I'll be honest. Okay, or I mean, I'm lucky to a certain extent where I do some of the cover art myself. I mean, I didn't do the demon completely myself, but my latest book, Apex, I did the cover art for, and then obviously for my kids' books, I did all the illustrations for those, including the cover art. So I'm lucky in that regard. But there are other options. There are other occasions where I thought I really want this for my cover, but I'm like I can't really justify spending X amount of money for it or hiring somebody to do it, kind of thing. And so as an indie author, I guess it's both the benefit and the pitfall. You can do what you want when you want. But sometimes you are restricted with what you can do. But as long as you remain authentic, as long as you what you put out there is true to your story, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, because authenticity on the part of the author is free. Yeah, and it's just a matter of figuring out like what are my resources and how can I utilize those resources, whether it's like finances or contacts, or in my case, it's like I shelled out for the artwork, but then I did all the typography and stuff myself, right? So there are different things that you can do and different kind of combinations that you can utilize. But so long as you are authentic, then that authenticity will kind of spill over into other aspects of the cover and the typography and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Hope, do you want to get in here just from like the perspective of an artist and talking about authenticity and how you can convey that as best as possible through your work?
Yeah. So I've gotten to work for people who aren't independent publishers and independent publishers as a cover artist. And there's been situations where I have not even been able to talk to the author Like the publisher will literally contact me. I don't know if you guys have had this experience, and they give me the briefing. I send in something, they then send that to the author. So it's like this telephone game. And that's one of those examples where I'm just kind of like, oh, it sort of feels like there's too many middlemen, because again, authenticity for me as an artist, just getting to have a conversation with a author and letting you tell me why you love the book, I'll start to see a movie in my head. But it's all about that human connection and that sort of like translation of the energy that the author holds. Like you're holding this archetypal shape of the story. You love it, you created it, it exists within your mind. And I've found that I've done my best work when I get to have that direct communication. Like that is what all of this art making is about. So that's what I've found. And, you know, it always depends on what people are looking for. And if you're working in the realm of, you know, dark romance, fantasy, I've noticed a lot more like realistic photographic type covers becoming very popular. And so I work with more so traditional watercolors. So it exists in this hybrid realm between something that's quite clearly painted and something that might be a little bit photoshopped. And so I like to think, because it's just, I just love working with paint, that there's a level of authenticity that comes through a traditional medium that may not be popular right now. As I'm sure you guys look at trends and you look at, okay, look at all the books coming out. What, like, you know, how is the Fourth Wing? Like, how is that sort of designed? How are all of these, like, more so well-known mainstream novels setting the pace for cover design? So I oftentimes, like, have this weird feeling where I'm like, what does the author actually want? But then also, how much do you need to curb this as a product for the masses versus what the individual, like, human creating it? Like, how much value does the author, like, have in regards to being able to translate something that somebody who wants to buy the book will see what the author makes, and because it is so individualistic and unique and away from that main trend, can that be the thing that gets them to buy the book? Because it is this brighter glimmer on the ocean that sort of stands out because of its uniqueness. So I always try to push for that as an illustrator of covers, pushing away from the trend, but yet it's still beautiful. Because I don't know, I mean, I think that, like, then you give it a chance to be its own thing and disregard, I guess, you know, the marketing side of it.
Yeah, but
that's
the tricky
my
balance,
approach.
isn't it?
That is.
It's kind of like,
yeah.
There's this weird kind of dichotomy within this realm of, like, visually appealing and marketable, and
Yes.
something could be like Fraser, what we were talking about earlier. I mean, like, you're obsessed with the Renaissance, clearly. Shout out to, like, you know, any Renaissance artists out there.
Michelangelo, yeah, wherever you are, thanks, bud. No,
thanks, dude. We appreciate
wherever he is. He could be anywhere by now.
Yeah. He's on the ceiling, is where he is. No,
yeah.
He's in this, so is he eating a pizza, isn't he?
I don't really like the Renaissance. I'm just like, it's just a fancy word. It makes me sound posh. Right? I like surrealism. It's like that's my jam. No, here's the thing about authenticity, though, and I want to weigh in on what Hope was saying as well about from the artist perspective and collaboration. Okay, so I've had experiences in the past where I've thought that I can come up with a great idea for a cover as a writer. So I've thought, right, let's take the Baker Assassin. Okay, I've thought, right, let's say thieves break into his house, they burn his mother's cookbook. He then gets back in the game. And
how dare you destroy my mother's recipes?
Exactly,
Yeah.
Exactly right. I might think, right, what I want on the front of my cover is a mother's recipe cookbook up in flames. That would be amazing. And it probably would be an amazing piece of art. However, what is going to sell more books is Keanu Reeves in a suit and apron with a gun and a serving spoon, right? That's going to set, and that also will be an amazing piece of artwork. Now, I might not understand why it sells more, but the artist very likely will, because the artist is going to have a much more of an idea as to what type of imagery is going to be have wider appeal.
Hmm.
So I think that that's where the collaborative aspect of the art and the writing you're both trying to meet in the middle somewhere. So what I would say is don't get too focused on an idea. Work with the artist, and the authenticity you both bring will create something that is better than either of you could probably come up with solo.
Yeah. I mean, Holly's giving you shit for being too invested in this idea, but there are too many cooks in Keanu's kitchen, and he needs to take them out. So deal with
He's
that, Holly
just
Tinsley.
clutching on. He's like bruised and
it's
bloodied,
just
and in
too
a
good
suit
of
and
an
an
idea.
apron, holding on to
Yeah.
a whisk and a dream.
Exactly, a whisk and a dream. I love it. Fraser, you touched on something really important though, because it's like this is a collaboration, and you know, as an author, if you want to be, I mean, in my mind, this is the difference between a writer and an author. An author is someone who views themselves as an expert and a professional, and someone who is putting out a professional product into the world. A writer is just the person who writes the book. So you kind of have to put on this different hat of like, I am an expert in my field, and I'm acting professionally about my project, and therefore I have to seek out other experts, in this case designers and artists or whomever, to collaborate with me in order to create the best possible end product that we can possibly muster, right? Kirsten, I'll get your takes on this in terms of like how authors can find and source the right designers and artists, but also how they can work with the artists and designers to find that balance between something that is art, but also something that is marketable and works as a cover.
All right. So, like, you mean finding the right cover artist for you, basically?
Yeah.
Or yeah, sure. This was like, so I was pretty much born under a rock. When I wrote my first book, I didn't know social media existed. I was basically, it was written in a vacuum, and I put it out in the world, and then I discovered this lovely community. So what I used to find my rock star of a cover artist, Francisca Stern, was 99 Designs. I don't know if you've heard of it. It is like people upload their work, they basically submit their design, and like whoever sort of wins gets the commission. So I won the jackpot my first time. Like it was just like home run. First, I didn't even have to look for other candidates. I just knew that was like my cover artist. And then we got in touch, and then we just both figured out that it just fit. Like aside from that, I think after having found this lovely community of ours, I think word of mouth is a great way to find someone who's also like not only like knowledgeable in like cover design and art, but also someone who's like lovely to work with. I think like as creatives, like we're just all a bunch of oddballs, but like we can also find the oddball who complements our own oddball personalities. So I would absolutely recommend just like social media, being part of this community to find like cover artists who are easy to work with and who've probably worked with similar books or books, you know, similar to yours in terms of genre, typography, and like baked good thrillers. I lost
we're never gonna get past this.
So someone else jumped in. I lost
stealth
the
announcement for
question.
our new co-written projects.
Oh my god, yeah. But I agree that like word of mouth is huge. Obviously, just like look
Right.
at the books that you love, and I mean this is something that I do like with every book. Is basically like on the back I'll just be like designed by me, and the artist is so and so. And
Right.
so it's like you can also find in like the acknowledgments of books as well. Most books have the cover artist somewhere on the cover or the dust jacket, in which case it's like, oh my god, I fucking love this cover. Who did the art? Look on the cover. It will usually say it there, or look in the acknowledgments or the copyright page or something along those lines. Like if you see like all the amazing artwork that the Broken Binding is doing, always just like go on their social media page. They're tagging the artists in the posts about that specific book and be like, I love this art. Who's that artist? You know, maybe seek out a way that isn't just like a direct DM. Try and go to their website and see if they have an email address or a contact form or something along those lines, or if they have like an account on ArtStation. There's usually contact information there too. DMs are not the best way to go about it in general, because you could end up in a spam folder as opposed to that person actually seeing your message and and responding to you. Anyone else have any tips for working with artists, finding artists?
I would love to share some tips, but all I would say is ask Hope, because Hope's an amazing artist. But yeah, I would, in terms of the time, I haven't got anything that I can share because I would just go on for way too long and well overrun when
And
the next panel
Holly's
is due to
gonna
start.
Holly's gonna kill you.
Exactly, right? But yeah, I Hope would have way more of an idea than I would about how to find artists.
Yeah, because I began kind of the opposite, where I was born under a rock, but then I started doing social media at like 13, 14, but just sharing my artwork. Like I was one of those nerdy kids who was like, I just do a dragon, hashtag dragon art, like early Instagram days back when it was fun and cool before reels and everything. And that's how I ended up getting a lot of my early jobs because it wasn't as saturated as it is now. And I also know that I'm going to say one thing about the DMs. I think you should send a DM, and this is just anecdotal. I think you should just begin with a very brief hello. I'm a writer. I focus on this and this, and I'm interested in commissioning some artwork. Is this something you have time for? Because that literally takes you 5 seconds. Just to send that out there. Worst case scenario, you don't get a response, or they're like, sorry, I'm too busy. But in that way, you are working directly with the artist, and you're not going through, like an Upwork sort of service. Because then there's this sort of weird, there's a paywall. Everything's sort of monitored. It again takes away that human connection. And for as annoying as social media can be, I do think that it has that potential to unite like-minded people. So I would recommend using that, or asking an artist or friend who uses social media if they can recommend anybody, because maybe you don't want to be on there, but somebody is on there and they could ask other people for you. Sometimes when I get asked to do commissions that I'm just like, this is not me, I'll recommend another friend, and I just know they're a good person. I know they're looking for work, and connect those people. So yeah, definitely ask people and surf through the internet for sure.
Put in your time.
That would be
research it.
my tip. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're gonna close out there because Holly's gonna get annoyed if we spend any longer talking. Because the next panel is coming up. Check out Women in War and Politics right now on the Spotlight Indie channel, featuring Holly Tinsley as a moderator, as well as panelists Emily Inkpen, NC Scrimgore, Tim Hardy, and Phil Williams. You can also check out the Spotlight Indie Patreon with all the funds that come from membership going towards this this kind of event, as well as like the in-person events that Spotlight Indie is hosting, including Flax Mill Maltings on the 23rd of May, which has a free entry, and there are also trade
Oh, Adrian froze.
Oh no.
Okay, good. I'm like, oh no, is that me?
Yeah, no, he's back. He's back.
I froze during my pitch. Okay.
Oh no.
The worst possible time.
Go.
This is like a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves got it with his whisk.
Yeah. The universe wants us to talk more about Keanu and his baking.
Yeah, exactly.
What Adrian was about to say, I think, is that May 23rd is when the in-person event is. There's more that's happening on the big weekend. You can join Spotlight Indie's Patreon as well, and that is all in the works. Just go check out Spotlight Indie. Adrian, you're now back, I think. Don't worry, I picked it up. It's all good. You're all good.
Oh no, you can't hear us.
Oh no.
Oh, no. Okay.
Technology.
Yeah, I tell you what. We hang on. A wave to everyone, Adrian. So I'll tell him to wave. What we'll do, we'll just quickly go around. So tell us, Connor, where can people find you?
I'm on TikTok and Instagram at the CM Kaplan, and at Blue Sky on CM Kaplan Writes.
Amazing. Kirsten, where can people find you?
Mostly on Insta. That's k.e.rosero.
Amazing. Tan, where can people find you?
So I'm on Blue Sky and on Facebook, just as Tanmay Dar, and my website is just tanmaydar.com.
Amazing. Hope, where can people find you?
Instagram, just my name, Hope Christofferson, ChristofferSon.
Amazing. Can you hear us now, Adrian?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No.
Yeah.
Well, you can find Adrian on the Funkaddict YouTube channel at
Oh my
SFF
God.
Addicts. Go check out his book Mushroom Blues. It's amazing. And yeah, thank you for joining Spotlight Indie. Stay tuned for the next panel. Go check into that, Women in War and Politics, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Take care, guys.
Bye.